when my people can all relate. We must stop fighting to achieve the peace that was taught in our country. We shall all be free. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place where we can be free? Come with me over there. Let's put an end to racial hatred. Let's learn to share. Can you feel it? It's in the air. Now it's time for changes. Time for us to care. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place where we can be free?
It's time for the percolator. 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 Percolator. for the percolator. It's time 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 for the percolator.
Every freaking night, think about freaking. Every freaking day, think about freaking. Every freaking night, think about freaking. Every freaking day,
Every fucking day, every fucking day, I wanna fuck you, baby, in every fucking way.
every freaking day, every freaking night. I wanna pick you, girl. Your body's so freaking tight.
Every fucking night, and every fucking day, I wanna fuck you, baby, in every fucking way.
Every freaking day, every freaking night. I wanna pick you, girl. Your body's so freaking tight. Freaking you is love. 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 Think about freaking every freaking night. Think about freaking every freaking day. Think about freaking every freaking night. Think about freaking every freaking day. Think about freaking every freaking night. Think about freaking every freaking day. Think about freaking every freaking night. Think about freaking every freaking day.
Underworld is live in the building. Let's go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, y'all. We got original beats on deck. Everybody tuning in, checking out this show. We got nothing but original beats from unsigned producers, holding it down for y'all underground artists. If you need a beat and you like a beat on this show, click the link that we got in the chat room. I'm going to be posting the link up, www.under.clangroups.com. That's www.under.clangroups.com. Look for the donation button. Buy your beat, $20 a beat. If you hear a beat you like, cop that beat. We're going to put it in your email today and we can get to work. get your music played on the show after you finish recording and laying your track. That's how we do on Underworld Radio, y'all. It's your boy, Old Stiggity, Old Styles. We got original beats on deck. Let's go.
to have a little fun. But now you come along and brighten up my world. In my heart I feel it, I'm that special kind of girl. Finally, you come along. The way I feel about you just can't be wrong. If you only knew the way I feel about you, I just can't describe it. Oh, no, no. Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face. My feelings can't describe it. Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face, and I just cannot hide it. Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face. My feelings can't describe it. Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face, and I just cannot hide it. Finally,
You laugh at me, and you got the nerve to criticize. Yeah, if I were you, I'd sit down and consider what you're doing. Love me like I love you, and together ain't no telling what you'll do. Yeah, oh, I said it. Yeah, I was born this way. From a little bitty boy, from a little bitty boy, I was born this way. I love you, and even you born this way. Yeah, I'ma tell y'all one more time, I was born this way.
Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna. I know. Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna. I know. Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna. I know.
the day when my people can all relate. We must stop fighting to achieve the peace that was taught in our country. We shall all be free. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place where we can be free? Come with me over there. Let's put an end to racial hatred. Let's learn to share. Can you feel it? It's in the air. Now it's time for changes. Time for us to care. Follow me. Why don't you follow me to a place where we can be free?
Yo, this your boy Wafu Malik Star. I'm chilling in the underworld with your boy O Stiggity, O Styles. You know what I'm saying? Where the heat comes from. Y'all need to get up on this. Y'all need to be down with the underworld team. Join the movement. Let's go.
Get 'em! This your boy Mac ripping 304 Dub V, baby. Get 'em squad, GS all day. And when I want to listen to real hip-hop, I tune into Underworld Radio and hang out with my boy Old Styles, the JFK and Jers, and all my Law fans. Get 'em!
Yeah, we're good, man. It's D.R.E. the realest MC. CEO of the Real Entertainment. Shout it out to my man, Fitting Those Styles, the underground pioneer. Holding it down for Underworld and Underground ENT for this one day.
Yo, you should do Crisis. Giving much love, much respect, and much love to my bro, the pioneer. Beginning and where it's ending. Underworld.
There's some whores in this house. 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 There's some holes 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 in this house.
You used to love me, you used to touch me. Oh.
touch me. You used to please me. You used to squeeze me. You used to love me. You used to touch me. Now, honey, let me tell you something about my man. You know he's a good-looking, sweet little thing. That man knows how to satisfy a woman. You know what I'm talking about? Girlfriend, let me tell you, he bought me this fur coat, a brand new car, and this 24-karat gold diamond ring. Ain't it pretty? Girlfriend, you know how it is when you got a good man. You start doing things like wearing those high-heel shoes and the lace stockings with the garter belt and putting on that sweet-smelling, seductive perfume. But you know what? I'm gonna have to put some lame brain in check, honey, because she got her mark on my man. But baby, I ain't giving up on this here good thing, not for nobody. Cause what that dorky chick got wouldn't satisfy a cheese stick, let alone my baby. She better take her big long head butt and move on. Cause he's mine. All mine. Move on. All mine.
She didn't have a daughter, she did have a son. She said the lift doesn't work, run up the stairs and come. And if you don't come quick, you're not gonna know that son. So I grab a bunch of rose and I started to run. Here I come, whoa. 2 months later, she said, come and get your son. Cause I don't want your baby to come tie me down. Not because you are old and I am young. Yes, while I'm young, yes, I wanna have some fun. Run me down, should live a little, whoa. I'm broader than Broadway. Yes, I'm broader than Broadway. When you go to Volcano, it's like a stage show. You have man that swing DJ and blow. Pull it down, it's ready, swing. And the intercom Rosie tell me to come. Said she didn't have a daughter, she did have a son. She said the lift doesn't work, run up the stairs and come. And if you don't come quick, you're not gonna see your son. So I grab a bunch of rose and I started to run. Here I come, whoa. 2 months later, she said, come and get your son. Cause I don't want your baby to come tie me down. Cause you are old and I am young. Just while I'm young, yes, I wanna have some fun. Run me down, should I walk, move, whoa. Exercise than spies way. Extra broad than Broadway. And the intercom Rosie tell me to come. So she didn't have a daughter, she did have a son. Here I come. Swing, cause I'm broader than Broadway. Yes, I'm broader than Broadway. Over the ocean and over the sea, all of the girls them are vote for we. Should ride whoa. See, and the intercom Rosie tell me to come. Said she didn't have a daughter, she did have a son. She said the lift doesn't work, run up the stairs and come. Cause if you don't come quick, you're not gonna see your son. So I grab a bunch of roses and I start it.
I'm gonna push some more. Girl, I want to make you sweat. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you cry out, I'm gonna push it some more. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long. Come on. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long. So I say to myself, if she loves me, or not. But the dread I know that love is his together. With a little bit of this and a little bit of that. The lyrics goes on the attack. My tongue gets tied, and that's no lie. I'm looking in your eyes. I'm looking in your big brown eyes. Ooh, girl, and I've got this to say to you. Hey, girl, I want to make you sweat. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you cry out, I'm gonna push it some more. Girl, I want to make you sweat. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you cry out, I'm gonna push it some more. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, 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 long. Ooh yeah. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long, long. One more time. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long. Sing it. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long. Yeah. Woo, 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 wee. Yeah. I'm looking in your big brown eyes. Ooh, yeah. And I've got this to say to you. Hey. Girl, I want to make you
slow down when you see the amber. Speed up, don't pull over. Oh, love, do it. Don't cry, do it. Rock it up twice. Feel good. It's nice. Nobody drive two side like I learn you to learn. Put on your indicator when you the turn. Straight up my street, make your tires them burn. Please don't overturn. I parade around the clock. Won't you just come in? Ooh. I've got plans for everyone. One for you, my friend. I'm not sure where to go, but I must find a place. Come into my bedroom, baby, and fit into my space. Put up to my bumper, baby. In a long black limousine. Ooh. Put up to my bumper, baby. Drive it in between. Check this. Pull up to my bumper, baby. In a long black limousine. Ooh. Pull up to my bumper, baby. Drive it in between. Pull up, do it. Don't cry, do it. Rock it up twice. Feel good. It's nice.
I'm just giving out songs. Every day I get up on the frowns. I want to more, you know, little girl. I want to more, you know, say, oh.
Everyone loves sometimes.
You better know.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
It's not a crime.
Everyone falls in love sometimes.
Remember that girl.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
Hold on, hey. Question I ask. Tell me what you wanna, what you really wanna do. Tell me, baby girl, if your love is really true. Tell me what you wanna, what you really wanna do. Tell me, baby girl, hey, I know what me like, no. Yo, if you really love me, let it flow. And if you don't love me, let me go. What in the road, boy, I let you know that.
Everyone falls in love sometimes. I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
It's not a crime.
Everyone falls in love sometimes.
Bonnie.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
Hey, hold on. Hey. Beep. The singer got the key to the G. And we pretty girl want to meet. So tell me what's up before me it in the streets. You see, all 8, 9, 10. The whole of them girl they want to be our friend. And you me really love. Why you want it for end? You have me brains up on puzzle. Me can't comprehend, but then again.
Everyone born in love sometimes.
Whoa, nah, nah.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
Ball me about.
Everyone born in love sometimes. I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
Hey, you want me to tell you something, girl? You want me to tell you something? Girl, you have me reminiscing when me remember about the loving and kissing. So tell me, girl, why you wanna be dissing? I tried to talk to you, but you're not listening. It's only natural for my love to be glistening. Baby, in my heart I know there's something missing. Since lately you keep on flipping. So listen keenly to what the singer singing.
Everyone falls in love sometimes.
Whoa, nene.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
It's not a crime, not a crime, no time.
Everyone falls in love sometimes. I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime.
Hold on, question I ask. Tell me what you wanna, what you really wanna do. Tell me, baby girl, if your love is really true. Tell me what you wanna, what you really wanna do. Tell me, baby girl, hey, I know have me like no, yo. If you really love me, let it flow. And if you don't love me, let me go. One thing the road boy won't let you know that.
Everyone born in love sometimes.
I know.
I don't know about you, but it ain't a crime. Everyone born in love sometimes. I don't know about you, but it ain't.
We can't say something again, girl. We can't say something again. When I beat, the singer got the key to the Jeep. And we pretty girl want to meet. So tell me what's up before me it's in the streets. You see, at 8, 9, 10. The whole of them girl they want to be my friend. And you me really love. Why you want it to end? You want me break the puzzle. Me can't
come. This one dedicated to the girl with the angel face and the devil heart. You know, so ragamuffin chaka, the most new plant players come to deal with the case. Step up my youth, hear this.
I know this little girl, her name is Maxine. Her beauty's like a bunch of roses. If I ever tell you about Maxine, you older say I don't know what I know, but murder she wrote.
Real.
Murder she wrote. Murder she wrote. Murder she wrote.
Action with him, a pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. Follow me. A pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. Say girl you pretty, your face it pretty, but your character dirty. Girl you just a act too flirty. You run to Tom Dick and also hurry. And when you find your mistake, you talk about you sorry. Come now.
Have a cozy corner where she jokes and where she jam. She know about Luke Black and every money man. Make love with the coolie Chinese, white man and Indian. The wickedest kind of girl that Mr. Flyers go up and now know you heard about this girl. Her name is Maxine. Her beauty's like a bunch of roses. And if I ever tell you about Maxine, you older say I don't know what I know, but murder she wrote.
Murder Richard man.
Murder she wrote. Murder she wrote. Na. Murder she wrote.
Watch you now stand still. You not pay me like bill. If you test a ragamuffin, girl, you go and get killed. Girl, keep wait. Cause you a crebe. And the lyrics when me talk, it me DJ, girl, come out. Because you nah shock out. And when you hear the ragamuffin, you have to jump and shout. Don't touch me gate. You not pay me what I read. The concrete is great. You underrate. Follow me. You pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. Follow me. You pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. Say girl you pretty, your face it pretty, but your character dirty. Girl you just a act too flirty. You run to Tom Dick and also hurry. And when you find your mistake, you talk about you sorry.
Now every middle of the year, this young girl have a passion for the coolie white man Indian mixing kill and his fan. And just the other day, me see her 6 months pregnant. Now she back for sweet again with not a baby in a prom. Do you heard about this girl? Her name is Maxine. Her beauty's like a bunch of roses. And if I ever tell you about Maxine, you older say I don't know what I know, but murder she wrote. Murder she wrote. Murder she wrote. Na. Murder she wrote.
Excuse me. Y'all never know so you straight. Ragamuffin chaka, they must come to flash it same way. Oh, follow me. Your pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. Follow me. Your pretty face and bad character. Them the kind of living can hold chaka. So girl you pretty, your face ain't pretty, but your character dirty. Girl you go, she look ready. When she wash her clothes, it dirty, girl, you not ready. If you can't cook for me, girl, you not ready. If you can't wash for me, girl, you not ready. If you know you're flirty, flummy. You pretty face and bad character. Then the kind of living can't hold you couple of me now. You pretty face and bad character. Then the kind of living can't hold you couple of stand still. You not pay me like that. You can't keep it. Cause you are crabby, and the lyrics and the talk. And if me DJ girl come out, because you now shock out when you hear the ragamuffin, if you jump and shout, not touch me gate. You not pay me what I read, because great is great, you're under it. Come on. You earn about it.
Long. Hey. Standing across the room, I saw you smile. I said I wanna talk to you for a little while. But before I make my move, my emotions start running wild. My tongue gets tied, and that's no lie. I'm looking in your eyes. I'm looking in your big brown eyes. Ooh, yeah. And I've got this to say to you. Hey. Girl, I want to make you sweat. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you cry out, I'm gonna push it some more. Girl, I want to make you sweat. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you cry out, I'm gonna push it some more. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, long. Come on. A la 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 long, a la 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 long. Ooh. So I say to myself, if she loves me or not. But the dread I know.
Woman want good love. Now sympathize. Woman want good love every night. Right now. Love a girl. Abby. Step up.
She want a lover, man.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
You think you are so fine.
Big chat no work, yeah, man. Watch the time.
Stop playing with my mind.
Woman no in a joke when she will want the wine.
You call me on the phone.
I know what a talking angel come down.
And now I want you home.
I tell Jackie, girl, me nah use no stone.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction?
Bedroom bully, she no want that you know. She want a man to caress her up like so. And I make love to woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all out. Hardcore loving man, you must see insane. Woman no want no man to make she feel pain. Sweet loving in the falling rain. Sweet loving a mix of hard brain.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
Action.
That's a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
You think you understand?
Agony, pain and loving and no one.
I need a loving man.
But if I love it, don't be enough affection.
Sweet thoughts and tender care.
No one want to come tear up or a seal.
Can you erase my fear?
You're coming right over, so now they just beware of me.
Action.
At a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be make the girl them broke out.
Action.
At a bag of mood.
Sweet.
Don't be make the girl them broke out.
I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction?
Bedroom bully, she no want that you know. She want a man to caress her up like so. And I make love to woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all out. Just hardcore loving man, you must see insane. Woman no want no man to make she feel pain. Sweet loving in the falling rain. Sweet loving a mix of our brain.
Action.
Sweet. Sweat till you can't sweat no more. And if you if she loves me or not. But the dread I know that love is his to get. With a little bit of this and a little bit of that, the lyrics goes on the attack. My tongue gets tied, and that's no lie. I'm looking in your eyes. I'm looking in your big brown eyes, girl. And I've got to say to you, hey, come down, girl.
And now I want to home. Action. Sweet. Action. Sweet. I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction?
Bedroom bully, she no want that, you know. She want a man to caress her up like so. And I make love to woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all out. Hardcore loving man, you must be insane. Woman no want no man to make she feel pain. Sweet loving in the falling rain. Sweet loving a mix of her brain.
Action.
At a bag of mouth.
Sweet.
Loving make the girl them broke out.
Action.
At a bag of mouth.
Sweet.
Loving make the girl them broke out.
You think you understand?
Agony, pain and loving and no one.
I need a loving man.
But if I love it, don't be enough affection.
Sweet talks and tender kiss.
No one want to come tear up our Brazil.
Can you erase my face?
They're coming right over, so now they just beware of me.
Action.
At a bag of mouth.
Sweet.
Don't be make the girl them broke out.
Action.
At a bag of mouth.
Sweet.
Don't be make the girl them broke out.
I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction?
Bedroom bully, she no want that, you know. She want a man to caress her up like so. And I make love to woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all out. Hardcore loving man, you must be insane. Woman no want no man to make she feel pain. Sweet loving in the falling rain. Sweet loving a mix of our brain.
Action. Never will I feel discouraged, 'cause our love's so mystery. Demonstrating love and affection that you give so openly. I like the way you make me feel about you, baby. Want the whole wide
last night. Been dreaming of you. Please hold me tight, 'cause I can't love the way that I feel. I just can't love the way that I feel. Deep in the night, you took my heart. Now danger's inside, 'cause I can't love the way that I feel. I just can't love the way that I feel. Baby, you make my love come down. Ooh, you make my love come down. Make it come all the way down. Ooh, you make my love come down. Baby, you make my love come down. Ooh, you make my love come down. Can't do without your tender love. There's no way out, and I can't love the way that I feel. I just can't love the way that I feel. Your love has a force, got me under your spell. So take me, I'm yours, and I can't love the way that I feel. I just can't love the way that I feel. Baby, you make my love come down. Ooh, you make my love come down. Make it come all the way down. Ooh, you make my love come down. Baby, you make my love come down. Ooh, you make my love come down.
You were the girl that changed my world. You were the girl for me. You lit the fuse, I stand accused. You were the first for me, but you turned me up.
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
But you turned me on.
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
You were my thrills, you were my kills. You dropped the bomb on me. You turned me out, you turned me on. You turned me loose, then you turned me wrong.
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
But you turned me out,
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
just like Adam and Eve, set me free. You took me to the sky, I've never been so high. You were my fears, you were my thrills. You were my hope, baby, you were my smoke. You dropped the bomb,
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
but you turned me out,
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
but you turned me on,
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
You dropped the bomb on me,
You dropped the bomb on me, baby. You dropped the bomb on me.
You were in motion, felt like an ocean. You were the good for me. You were the first explosion, turned for me, but you turn me up.
You drop the bomb on me, baby. You drop the bomb on me. You drop the bomb on me, baby. You drop the bomb on me.
I won't forget what you done to
You
me,
drop the
babe.
bomb on me, baby. You drop the bomb on me. You drop the bomb on me, baby. You drop the bomb on me.
There's no need to pretend that this will end another way. Tomorrow you'll wake up and be on your way. Forget all the things you'll say tonight. That's why I'm caught up in one night love affairs. In true love, we'll find me there. You see, I'm caught up in one night love affairs. In need of love again.